How many, before they walked in the room today, could say they have been to the Port of Los Angeles? Good. How many know that the Port of Los Angeles is not the Port of Long Beach? All right. Making good progress here. The only reason I bring up that distinction is that most times when I talk to people about what we do, they say, oh, you're down in Long Beach. Well, yeah, I live in Long Beach, actually, so I don't mind that. But the fact of the matter is that we do have two ports, two very large ports, that are on the San Pedro Bay, and they work together very well, and they cooperate on various kinds of programs. They have a lot of what we call TEUs, which are measurements of containers. 20-foot equivalent units is what they stand for. A standard shipping container is 20 by 8 by 8. The Port of Los Angeles by itself processes about 7 million or a little more of these containers per year. In other words, container ship comes into the Port of Los Angeles. If it's one of the larger ones, it might have 8,000 or maybe as many as 14,000 containers in it. Each one of those containers has to be taken off the ship, put on it may be stored for a while, then transferred to a what they call a chassis, which to me is just a truck trailer, and that holds the container, and then moved to some other location. Or possibly that container may be put on a rail car, because most of the Port of LA's docks now have what they call on-dock rail, which allows them to make up a train, bring it on to the dock, fill it up with containers, and ship it out that way. Now this whole process, almost every single activity that occurs from the time that container starts coming into Los Angeles is powered by a diesel engine. Whether it's the container cranes that do what they call a lift, they take the container off the ship, put it on the chassis. Whether it's the yard tractor that Alex was talking about that moves that chassis to a storage location or to some other intermodal transfer point, whether it's a locomotive which might power one of those trains, or some other form of moving those containers. Those 7 million containers, each one had about 5 or 6, shall we say, interactions with a diesel engine. And every single one of those diesel engines creates a lot of pollution. Now, we have the dirtiest air in America. I think everyone's aware of that. And we have a situation where it's very important that we monitor the air quality around the ports. Because it's a locus of that air pollution. All that stuff that you see that you saw in the picture that Lutz showed you of the Los Angeles skyline, 25 miles down the 110 in San Pedro, that's where a lot of it's being produced. So air quality is something that we at PortTechLA are very, very conscious of. And at the ports, they have a clean truck program, which is and a clean air action program, both of which are meant to reduce the amount of pollution that is going into the air around the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. But we have other interests as well at PortTechLA. Now, you've had I'm not going to go back and tell you what an incubator is. Fred did a great job of that. We're also a clean tech incubator. We are also part of you've heard of it. But just to review, because we will have a quiz at the end. We have to move these containers. They go as quickly as possible to points 20, 25 miles inland, where they can be transferred to railroads, to some of the other railroads or to other trucks, like the Class 8 vehicle that Alex was talking about. It could be a drayage truck, which just moves containers to a point, or it could be one of the larger, or the same kind of truck is also used to go cross country. Maybe someday we'll get that TransPower Class 8 vehicle to go all the way across. So what we do is look for technologies and entrepreneurs who are interested in solving some of these air and clean water issues, who are interested in security, who are interested in goods movement, who are interested in renewables. So some of the things that Alex was talking about, for example, the stationary power packs. Do you know that because the ships that come into the port are put out so much pollution, one of the ways that the ports have found that they are requiring these ships to do is to essentially plug in and turn off their engines or their generators. They're all diesels. I mean, the engines are what they call low-speed diesels. The generators, gensets, are used to provide power when the engines are off or to supplement what the engines do. So the point is, a ship that comes into port has their engines or gensets on all the time. What the ports have done, both ports doing this, attacking it two different ways, is requiring the ships to essentially have the same thing I wish I had on my house in New Jersey this week, which is a standby generator that provides power to them from the shore so they don't have to run their engines. All right. When you do that, when you have this cable, however it is attached to the shore, and the ship is running on electrical power, guess what happens to the electric consumption for the ports? If you looked at a curve, it would go big skyrocket. And that means that the rates that are charged the port for their electricity become very high very quickly, and they stay at that rate until the ship or ships reduce their amount of electrical consumption, electrical power consumption. Now, my point is simply that those stationary power storage battery units that Alex is talking about are one of the methods that could be employed at the port to try and reduce the amount of electrical consumption and to stabilize it. That's the key thing. Because electricity likes to be stable. Electricity does not like perturbation. It likes to have constant load. And when it doesn't have a constant load, that's when you start having equipment breakdowns and other kinds of things, because some things are being overpowered and so forth. All right. We aren't going to go into electrical engineering here because I get over my head in about another 2 or 3 sentences. Anyway, we are looking for, at the ports, any way we can to reduce electrical consumption, to clean the air, to do what we can to protect our homeland through the secure kinds of technologies that can be employed, and to move those containers out to distribution centers inland as quickly as possible. And that's what our interest is. Sometimes we encounter entrepreneurs who come up to us and say, look, I have a new app. This new app will, you can play a game with it, where you can communicate with somebody, or you can do whatever it is. And we say, well, if you use that app, could you move containers? Could you tell where the containers were? Could you, if you use that same software that you've developed, would it give a manager of a terminal the ability to track containers? Oh yeah, maybe I could do that. Come on down. We want to talk to you, because these are the kinds of things that are just as important as figuring out how we get another, a few molecules of carbon out of the air as well, because maybe if they're more efficient, they'll help us. So some of the companies that we work with, I'm going to show you a list of our clients here. Some of these companies are important just because we don't have to use so much oil, or they keep the air a little bit cleaner, or they have a way with a zero emission technology like TransPower, or we have one that's an algae company that can generate methane. That's the end product after they've processed the algae and all the other things that they do. So you can see from this list, the first two are what we call bypass oil filtration companies. What they do is make the oil so clean that it's basic, it's an add-on system to an internal combustion engine. They make the oil so clean that it's basically new again. Oil doesn't wear out. Oil gets dirty. And if you can filter it to a point where it is up to new standards again, the engine is more efficient, you get better mileage if it's a vehicle, and you put less pollutants into the air. We've got another one, that UTR Plus, which does propane conversions from diesel. We have a training company that has a training device for hazardous materials. TransPower, of course, The high Z is a very exciting one because they have the ability to generate an electrical current by causing that current to flow between a hot and a cold point. In other words, if you had the cool side of a ship and an electrode on that and their black box, and the warm side of the engineering spaces in that ship, and you could make a current flow between those two places through their magic little device, you could create an electrical current with no moving parts.
Wow.
I think it's pretty impressive. I'd like to see them do more. We have another company, NRG Tech. They're developing a way to do what they call forward osmosis, which is a more energy efficient way of purifying seawater, or turning seawater into fresh water. Advanced Algae I just mentioned. International Metals and Energy has a diesel particulate filter. And then it just, all right, so that's my throwaway. We just had 4 of the companies that were in our PortTech Expo tell us that they are going to become clients of our incubation program. These are some of our partners. You can see it's a strong group. We've been very fortunate to have the support of not only the Clean Tech Initiative and the city itself, but also you can see here some of the organizations that work with us or have contributed to us, some of the government representatives that we've worked with, and we've tried to do the best we could with the resources that we have that they have made available to us. This is fairly standard stuff, but I want you to understand that when, as Fred was saying before, an entrepreneurial company approaches an incubation program, the incubator is looking for somebody who really understands the technology that they're trying to develop. And we want to make sure that as we invest public resources in that company, that they are wisely invested and not wasted. Because if we're going to take the time to work with them, we want to make sure that at the other end, at least to the extent that we can predict that, they're going to be a successful company. So those are some of the very basic things that we ask a company to have. Some of the ways that we market what we do, we have a couple of things. One is called the PortTech Forum, and I hope that you will all consider coming to the PortTech Forum. It's held on the second Tuesday of the month at LA Harbor College between 10 a.m. and noon. And this is a nice way for entrepreneurs and service providers, meaning the accountants, attorneys, consultants, and so forth, and capital providers, meaning somebody who can write a check, to get together and understand what we're doing at PortTechLA, and also to take an interest in some of those technology companies. It's a great opportunity to learn what they're doing, because every program has some presentations by our entrepreneurs, a presentation on some aspect of doing business at the ports, a presentation on running a technology company. How do you find finance? What do you do about personnel? How do you market? Marketing is very important to us. And who are the people that make this happen? Now, some of you may be aware that there's a fellow who writes about venture capital a lot. His name is Brad Feld. Just came out with a new book about a month ago on building entrepreneurial communities. You know what he said was the #1 thing you had to do in a community? He said you have to have events that get the entrepreneurs and the other